understand. And this, I think, is another thing that the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church share. I mentioned earlier that the Protestant Reformation, the priesthood was moved from being, in the Reformation churches, was moved from being seen as a sacrament to an office of the church. So once it was moved to being seen as an office of the church, then the church has more latitude in structuring that office. So I think that's where you see sort of in the churches that kind of come out of the Protestant Reformation, you see sort of more of an openness to women serving as ministers. It makes sense. It's an office of the church, and so the church can sort of structure that office, if that makes sense. But if you're coming out of a tradition that says it's not the church that controls the sacrament or can shape the sacrament, but the church is just the steward of the sacrament, which is priesthood, which both the Orthodox and the Catholic Church hold, we cannot shape that sacrament. It's we're entrusted with it, and our hands are, I don't say tied. I don't know if it's the right word,
Mm-hmm.
but it's.
Is it like a tradition? Like a tradition
It's
that
a
you uphold,
tradition,
right?
yeah, but it's yeah, it is. It's
Uh-huh.
a tradition, capital T.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. Now I do think, and I think Pope Francis has shared this himself, and then there's historical reasons for this, that the voices of women have been denied in the life of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the church does have to, and I wouldn't be surprised if Francis doesn't start to do this. The church has to be more attentive and to be more creative in finding ways where the voices of women can be heard, and the gifts of women can be heard. So there's offices in Rome. Historically, those offices have been held by cardinals and clerics and priests. The fact is, those offices are not sacramental. I think some people could say, does it have to be a priest that heads
Right.
this office? Or,
Could it be a woman?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question.
So if it's not like a written sacrament,
Right.
it's possible.
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. So I think that's part of it. I think it's a very complicated
Mm-hmm.
thing, and there's I think there is truth that the dignity of women needs to be upheld, and that the gift of women in the church needs to be upheld and strengthened. So I guess I would separate out the priesthood from that question,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a good question. It's a complicated question.
Since we're talking about Pope Francis, what do you think is the biggest impact he's had since he, became Pope?
Well, I think he's, and he's not necessarily changing the doctrine of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Really, in some ways, this is what sometimes people realize too. The Pope himself is limited in what he can do,
Mm-hmm.
and the Pope really himself cannot change doctrine at a
Right.
whim. But I think what he's doing is he's setting a different tone. I mean, the fact that he's very personable, the fact that he's making phone calls, the fact that he doesn't want to be behind security. He's just sort of setting a different tone and saying that we can be creative, we can talk to others, and we can. You don't have to necessarily agree 100% with another person in order to talk with them.
So like he's teaching more tolerance?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's witnessing it. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Benedict had it himself. Every pope's different,
Mhm.
just like every pastor is different, and
Mm-hmm.
each one has different gifts and skills. I think this is a skill that Francis has, and you sort of catch it, and I think he's kind of witnessing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's witnessing a Christian faith that's not afraid to go out into the world and talk. So. That's my own take.
What do you think about, things like, since we're kind of headed toward, let's see, what is the projected future of Catholicism as it relates to, developments in science and things like that, and societal issues,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know Catholicism has, a pretty strong stance on, like, abortion and birth control and, but more societal issues like gay marriage and stuff, with him coming out and making his comment about all that. What do you think about that?
All the hot button issues.
Sorry, have to ask.
That's right. It's okay. It's I
So
think,
focus on the future, yeah.
Yeah. That's me to be a prophet. So, I think the Catholic Church, and I think this goes back into its history and the history of thought within the church,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. I think the Catholic Church has a lot to share in these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
It's sorry, that noise is distracting. FADD or something. I think it's I think what the church teaches about abortion or about marriage,
Mm-hmm.
or about any of these sort of the big questions or hot button issues right now. The church is coming out of that from its perspective and from what we've, again, sort of getting back to the whole sense of being stewards
Mm-hmm.
of what we've been given. I don't think, and I think sometimes this is the misconception. I think it's both maybe on those outside the church looking in. I think sometimes the church isn't always the best of saying why we believe certain things. I think sometimes the thought is, well, the Catholic Church is against, rather than seeing why the Catholic Church is saying what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying what we're saying about marriage, not because we're against gay people,
Mm-hmm.
but because of what we believe marriage to be.
Right.
The church has concerns about abortion, not because we don't value the reality of women, and we don't recognize the tough reality of maybe a single woman trying to raise a family,
Mm-hmm.
but because of what we believe life to be. So those are kind of the reasons why we believe and hold what we believe. So it's the discussion. It's the discussion we have, and I think that the danger is that I would say on all these issues, all voices should be heard. And I think the church has a voice. I think the church has the right in the public square to share its thoughts, just as others have the right to share their thoughts.
Absolutely.
And that's the stuff of society, and so we should all get in there, not be afraid to share our thoughts, but do it in respect,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of work it out, and wrestle it through, and just try to figure it out. So I think the church has a lot to share. I think our tradition with science and understanding and learning, it's very well established, the how the church has encouraged that throughout history,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that will continue. I don't know if that answers the question.
It did. Yeah,
No.
definitely so. Anybody have any other questions? No? Do you have anything else you want to just add?
Well, I appreciate it. I think it's great that you all are doing this. It's
Absolutely.
What are your faith traditions? Do you have a faith tradition? So I know you're Orthodox, right? Okay.
Southern Baptist.
Baptist. Okay.
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal.
I was raised Southern Baptist. I would consider myself probably an atheist now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're all coming from very different
Very
perspectives.
different perspectives, yeah.
Perspectives. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have? Well, I guess you've been asking questions,
Mhm.
but I guess what's your perception of the church, the Catholic Church, from what you've heard growing up? And
It's kind of funny because whenever I asked like the common misconceptions, those were mine because I was like, I thought y'all had prayed directly to Mary. And,
okay.
you know, I didn't know that. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, I just never understood that concept. But it was cool that you brought that up.
Yeah, that's kind of.
The Catholic people that I've met are like Indian Catholic people, so it's a
Okay.
little bit. It's like a little bit of an Orthodox background, also like Roman Catholic, and
Yeah.
so it's a lot different. But I've never really gone because my parents were like, no.
Okay.
But yeah, I always thought the same things.
I've been to one mass and it was at St. Mary's in Oak Ridge.
Okay.
And I mean, it was years ago. I was probably maybe 12 or 13, but it was. I just remember it being a lot different than the Southern Baptist Church that I went to every Sunday. You know, with I won't say rituals, but the standing and sitting and the prayers. I just felt like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
And don't worry if you ever get a chance, I would encourage you to go to a Catholic service. No one's watching you. When do I kneel? When do I stand? Whatever.
Right.
It's all good. But if you get a chance, I would encourage you to check it out. It's
In
beautiful.
Russian church, you have to stand up the whole.
Oh
they
yeah,
don't really-
as like a reverence
confusion,
thing.
just,
Yeah.
Wow.
Like from 8 to on Sundays from 8 to like 11ish.
Yeah.
That's funny because like Baptists are like come to the altar and bow, and they're like stand up. So that's just like a different take on that too.
And really, pews, what we think of as pews in churches, that's really kind of an American invention.
Is
If
it?
you go to other parts of the world, like Russia,
They're just like rows.
or even in
America's
Europe,
lazy.
yeah,
Oh,
that's
just
kind of-
okay.
we think that's everywhere, but no,
That's
it's
funny. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
I didn't
that's an
either.
American thing. So
That is.
I went to Greek Orthodox Church in Nashville, and they have, when I walk in the first time, they have not just like seats, they have seats inside. So they sitting down in the service,
okay,
and they not supposed to. It's like, I mean,
It's like an
they did
Americanized
it, like,
thing.
they
They
did it
become
an American
American,
way,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
people won't stay like the whole service, but
yeah,
I don't think it's like if you're a Greek Orthodox church, you
Uh-huh.
have to
yeah.
stay. Like in Russian, you cannot just change it because you live in some other country. It's-
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's just for
So
me, it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Wow. So in the Russian Orthodox Church in the U.S., there's no pews, you stand.
I go to American Orthodox Church in the
Oh, okay.
Mountain. We have seats like for if you like really tired to stand up, but
Okay.
with the whole
Yeah.
service you can sit
Yeah,
down.
for
but-
the
How long are the
Organized.
services?
In that church that I go to, it's about hour and a half,
Yeah.
so it's not that bad.
That's pretty
Yeah.
bad. You can't do
But
that.
like in Russia, it's really hard.
Yeah, a couple hours, 3
Yeah.
hours.
And when it's like big like holidays, it's even more than.
Uh-huh.
So
Do people
So-
stand in rows or is it just like a
no,
group?
we just
Just in a
come to
group.
the church and we stay.
So it's like a concert.
Yeah.
Kinda.
And it's usually really like busy. It's like packed, so
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
there's like no space to move.
Huh. That's cool.
That is cool. What is the like if you were here in Chattanooga for the weekend, where would you attend mass?
Well, I have a job. I have to say
Right. Uh-huh.
but there's 5 Catholic churches in Chattanooga.
Mhm.
The one closest to here is St. Peter and Paul.
Mhm.
So it's actually the basilica. So basilicas are churches that are known for their architectural beauty
Right.
and maybe their worship. So architecturally, that's a very beautiful church to go see and experience. But you have Our Lady of Perpetual Help. It's on East Ridge, St. Jude, St. Stephen's. And then up on Signal Mountain, there's St. Augustine's.
What about Knoxville? Where do you go in Knoxville?
Knoxville, there's All Saints.
Uh-huh.
There's Sacred Heart Cathedral.
Right.
Holy Ghost, St. John Newman, Immaculate Conception downtown.
Why are they all like entitled saints?
That's
That's probably where like my misconception came from.
that's probably part of it. You're right.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like if you go here, you worship this Saint more.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it would be easy to just assume that. I
Yeah.
guess I never
Yeah.
thought about that.
To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah.
know where that comes from, but
Uh-huh.
it's just kind of the tradition. I think it's like where you would have like First Baptist Church.
Right.
I
Second
think in the
Baptist
Catholic Church, it's just a tradition that they were named after a saint.
Mhm.
My church is named after the street in front of it.
Yeah, mine
Yeah.
was too growing up.
Does the services have like a certain set thing? Like, I don't know, my church that I go to is like Psalms reading, and then we have praise and worship, and then we have like our pastor gives the message. So do you guys have like a set thing?
Yeah, there is. There's basically the Mass is two parts. There's what we call the Liturgy of the Word, so that's the reading of Scripture. And on Sundays we have 3 readings. There's an Old Testament reading, there's a reading from one of the letters of the New Testament, and then there's a Gospel reading, and then the sermon, and then you profess the creed, and then you offer petitions or prayers. So that's the Liturgy of the Word. That's the first part. And then the second part is the Liturgy of the Eucharist. So that's when the bread and wine is brought up to the altar, and it's really all connected to our belief in the Last Supper and Jesus saying, "This is my body, this is my blood." So you have the Liturgy of the Eucharist and the sharing of communion. So that's basically it. That's the Liturgy of the Word, Liturgy of the Eucharist.
Still read a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. In your, is it just one reading usually?
We do like the pastor will read the first verse of the psalm, and then we read the second one, and then we'll just do every odd or even number.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then I go to church. We do like most of our youth speak English,
Yeah.
and then our parents always speak Malayalam, which is the language I speak in my
Okay.
house. So they'll do like English worship, and they have our Indian worship.
Oh,
And
that's
then-
cool. So cool.
Yeah,
I wanna
so-
come.
Yeah. That's cool.
I'll visit.
Do you live in Chattanooga?
Yeah.
Is your family here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they have like a lot of Indian churches actually. There's a lot
Really?
of church politics. So
A
lot of
Oh,
church
yeah.
splits.
I think that's every.
Same with Asians.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Politics are everywhere.
do you guys have different well, I don't know if it's the same.
Hmm.
Different denominations within it, because like I'm Pentecostal, but then my church is non-denominational, but we have like Church of God, Assemblies of God.
Mm-hmm.
There's IPC, which is like Indian Pentecostal Church, but there's
Yeah.
like different denominations within Pentecostal.
I think I think parishes sort of develop a different style. Some parishes may be more, sometimes it comes down to music. Some parishes may be more traditional in their music and worship style. Some may be more kind of praise and worship type music. So I think that's part of it. I think now within the Catholic Church there's different rites, and those rites have different form. It's still the same Mass, but there's sort of a little bit different in the ritual. So you mentioned there's a branch of the Catholic Church in India, and so they have sort of, and it goes back to the history and the customs
Yeah.
and stuff.
But they stress St. Thomas a lot.
Yes, yeah, because the belief is actually that St. Thomas went to India.
Yeah, he's the one who converted a lot
Yeah,
of people.
yeah, and started the church in India.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a strong connection to St. Thomas. But the way that Mass is celebrated in India, the culture and would
Yeah.
have just the differences in that too.
That's true.
So, yeah. I've never been to an Indian Catholic celebration. I'll have to go see it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never either.
Have you been to India?
I have.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd like to go to India too. I'd love to go see India.
Make sure you bring a lot of like light clothes.
It's hot.
Right.
It's always hot. It's always hot.
And humid? I would think it's humid
It
too.
is very humid. Yeah, it's
Like
either
East
hot
Tennessee
or
and summer.
rainy.
Gosh, yeah, I know. Well,
Well, that's
awesome.
cool.
Thank you so much for
You're
Your
welcome.
time.
Thank you all.
absolutely.
Good luck on your project. I hope you all get it.